right, welcome everybody to another episode of Prepper Talk Radio. This is a special episode. It's an interview episode. It's just me, Paris, hosting this episode, and I'm going to chat with you today. We're going to be talking with my guest, who is Patty, and she and I met at the handgun course. So many of you who've been listening for a little while probably remember our video and podcast we did with Todd Nielsen of Nielsen Training, and I met her through my handgun course that I took on from Nielsen, from Todd, and that was fantastic. And so I met her there. She had a fantastic story that I thought would be very important to share with the world, especially when it comes to, a lot of us guys, we know we're tough, and, we got the, we grew up, playing cowboys and Indians or whatever. I don't know if that's politically correct to say, but I said it anyways. And we have this desire for self-defense and be tough, but a lot of times the ladies don't really understand that. There's quite a few out there that do, but in generally speaking, the ladies don't really have that kind of background or desire. But there's a real need for ladies and women to have some significant training with Second Amendment, their Second Amendment rights, and not just that, but also in hand-to-hand potential combat as well. Because with the way things are going in the world, there's some definite need for it. Patty, I want to welcome everybody. I want to welcome Patty and introduce Patty to everybody. Thanks for coming on the show and sharing your story with us. We've got several topics to discuss. I'm pretty excited about it. So thanks and welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This will be fun.
Yeah, for sure. So when we met at the handgun course, you shared with me that one of the main reasons why you were inspired, if you will, to get started training in self-defense is that you had a situation in your life. And I know that we're not going to get into the details of it because it's, that's not what we're here for, but you had been threatened by somebody or something in your life, and you felt like there was a need now for you to get some training. Is that right?
Yeah, basically, yeah, without going into details, just ugly drama with someone I used to live with that I had to move, and then was just concerned that that was going to follow me to where I live now because I didn't move very far.
So do you think
No,
do you think that's an isolated situation with just you, or do you think that's a
no,
pretty
no.
widespread, right? There's a lot of women in that situation, or even men potentially, but a lot of ladies in that situation. Would you agree?
Almost all of the women that I've met that since getting into firearms training, almost all of them had the same basic story. Like something happened,
Really?
they realized I'm not as safe as I thought I was, and I need to be safe, whether it's just for her or her kids. Um, like the other woman that was in our class with us, her husband was a federal agent, and she's realizing I am not safe when I'm out with my kids just because of who my husband is. And
Yeah.
so it's just realizing I'm not safe and I need to do something about it.
And, thankfully, there's, like yourself, you had that realization before something bad actually happened to you instead of after. And
Mhm.
so what would you say to the ladies that are listening, or even the guys that have girlfriends out there listening? What would you say to them to kind of help motivate them or get them up off the couch, so to speak, to realize that, hey, there's some real need for this?
It is it's hard to do that without having an experience where you feel in your heart like, oh yikes, this is for real. Unless you know someone who's been attacked, but or if something has happened to you, but to just consider we're worth defending.
Mm-hmm.
Each one of us is worth defending. And I remember Patrick, our martial arts guy that we take classes from. He, in the first class I took, he said, "I need you to get in the mindset where you defend yourself, and I want you to picture a precious person to you, someone you would do anything to defend." And he gave us a second to think about that, and this cute little 3-year-old boy popped into my mind that I would, claw through a brick wall to defend. And he said, "I'm going to bet every one of you probably picked some cute little face that came to mind, and just think for a moment how much you love them. And now I want you to think you were that face once. You were that precious little child. And even now
Wow.
today, you are the precious person. Those people are counting on you to come home, to take care of
Mm-hmm.
them. Somebody loves you. Somebody needs your help. You are precious to them. And I need you to get into the mindset where you're going to defend yourself. You are going
Yeah.
to get home to them. You are going to take care of them. You will be part of their lives, and they need you. So just understand how it's not just your own safety is important to you. You're important to somebody else, and you need to be there for them. And I know, like, dads might be maybe primarily in charge of defending the family, but who's most likely to be with the kids at the grocery
Mm-hmm.
store if someone tries to grab them, or at the park when some creepy dude's like, hey, I have puppies in my van, come, lure you
Right.
over here away from your mom. Your mom is going to be there many times, and she needs to be on the alert. And even
Absolutely.
kids, just for yourself, you are worth protecting.
I remember Patrick saying, and it was at a different class, but in a similar line of thinking, I should say. And he would always tell his daughter, I think his sister, who had a couple kids, he says, when you go to the store, how many kids do you take with you? And she's like, all of them. And he's like, are you kidding me? Like, you're a perfect person for a predator to look for, because while you're distracted with one kid, they're going to grab the other kid. And how many of us have been in the grocery store with kids, and they run down the aisle, or they run around the corner, and you're yelling at them, get back here, whatever. And so that you've got all these distractions with multiple kids, you're going to need to protect yourself. And so I agree with that. That's really important to share. So, you kind of got started in the firearms. So, okay, walk through the process with me. So you had a significant life situation where you felt threatened, and you were like, I need to defend myself. Why did you choose Todd? Why did you choose handguns? Why did you what was the next step? Like after that, what did you do to come to where you are? Can you tell me that process?
Sure. So I actually owned a handgun, but it had been sitting in a drawer for years because I bought it. Someone had persuaded me. I like to go camping by myself, like remote places. They're like, there are bears there. You should at least have a handgun. So I bought one, had no idea how to use it. So it sat in a drawer for like 3 years, 2 years, 3 years, something like that. And then, so I had one when this drama was happening. And then, I had to move, and it was so unsettling. I just never knew. I never quite felt safe after that. I never knew if this person would just appear suddenly and cause problems. And so I feel like, life happens for us, not to us. I try to keep that in mind anyway, and that life's a journey, and the things that you need appear. If you will just get on your journey, the things you need appear when you need them. And
That's
so
powerful.
I was just praying actually one day, just thinking, I'm asking God to intervene, to help me feel better, help protect me. And I heard his voice in my mind. He said, okay, but what can you do to protect yourself and feel better? And so I thought about that. And then the two things I came up with were, I can put a camera outside my door so I know somebody's there. And you have the handgun sitting in a drawer that you haven't used. You need to learn how to shoot.
Wow.
So then, and at first I'm like, wow, that's kind of scary. Am I going to need that actually shoot someone? I hope not. But again, I don't know that the lesson there was necessarily somebody's going to show up with a gun. It's you need to learn how to defend yourself. I kind of feel like that's more how that went. And so, as it turns out, one of my neighbors teaches firearms classes now and then. So which I hadn't realized, someone else, like almost, it was the same day I realized, okay, I'm going to take firearms classes. I just got a phone call. Someone was checking on me, and
Oh, wow.
I know, it's like God was clearly telling me, I'm on it. I know what's going on. And, they just called to check on me. I told them what was wrong. And they're like, did you know 2 doors down, Matt Newbold teaches classes. You should talk to Matt. So I took a few from Matt, and, the firearms community is not that big of a community around here, and they know each other. And so Todd's name came up more than once as I, was talking to different people. He's just really well known in the area and well respected. And so I just thought I should look into Todd, and followed him on social media. And they were just getting this, the BPMF training center opened. And I just felt like I need to get down there and take a class. And I was so intimidated by this. I didn't know anything. I was not raised around guns. I knew nothing about guns. And I was just acutely aware of how ignorant I was, and kind of embarrassed. I just felt dumb. And I was the only new person in the class, usually the only woman, always the only new person. Everybody else in the classes that I took, they're like law enforcement people, ex-military. Everybody else knew what they were doing but me. And they were very kind, but I was just so intimidated. And I just remember Todd, like all of the guys, Patrick, same thing. I go in there, I'm feeling really intimidated. And if you remember Todd's episode, he has a pretty intimidating resume. Like he's done some
Oh
amazing
yeah.
stuff. And I remember just thinking, is he going to be nice to someone new? Like will he be nice to someone new? But they were so kind, so patient and so kind. They're all of them. They're just protectors. And I felt like they took me under their wing. Like everything's going to be fine. We've got you. And I just bewildered even at the generosity and the kindness and how encouraging they were. And they genuinely wanted me to feel safe. Like every one
Hmm.
of them has spent extra time with me answering questions, what do I do if this happens? And they just were so kind and welcoming. And I just realized after I'd been there a little while, because it's not just an occasional class, there's a center you go to. And the same
Hmm.
people are there all the time. And it's a community. And after a few weeks, I just realized I'm home.
Yeah.
These are my people. I love this. This is the community I needed. I've been led to this place. I am supposed to be here.
That's
And
so cool.
just I feel so much better because the firearms training is like one extra layer of protection. And then
Hmm.
there's the hand-to-hand, the knife training, and that's another layer. And then the community is another layer of extra protection. And I just feel so much safer. And I can do it now. It took a
Yeah.
while. It was like 6 months before I was confident enough with that gun to carry it. A knife
Hmm.
doesn't take that long to learn how to use it, but to be able to get shots on target and be sure you're not going to hit a kid on the playground behind you or something like that. It was a good 6 months of training before I was that confident.
And how often did you train during that 6-month period?
Um, 1 or 2 classes a month,
Hmm.
and then dry fire practice at home. So
That's
I
awesome.
brought a target home with me from one of the classes that's up on the door in the kitchen. that I
That's
just,
so cool. That's so good. You just practiced.
when I'm cooking or cleaning, I'll just stop and shoot some rounds at the door.
That's
So
so
just
cool.
some
And that
practice.
that goes along with a couple episodes ago. We did a drill for skill, and you have to drill the skill, otherwise you lose it. It's so important to practice, practice, practice. And whether you're practicing at home, like dry firing, or just pulling it out, the gun out, and just getting in position to fire. I mean, that
Yep.
whole process, just pulling it out of the holster, getting into position to fire, not even necessarily firing or pulling the trigger, but just get that out and just do that. And then, of course, by the way, people, if you're listening to this, she's talking about dry firing with no bullets in the gun at the kitchen
Yes.
door, or with a laser target in her chamber.
Yes.
So she's not talking about firing live rounds into her kitchen door.
Yes.
So, um, so 6 months into this, now I'm gonna fast forward really quickly and let everybody know that she has just been chosen by BPMF to be one of the instructors for the USCCA's handgun instruction courses that they're going to start training down there. So, Patty, less than a year ago, probably, right? Would you say 8 months, maybe?
Mhm.
8 months ago, you were, I don't even, and I want you to tell the story because you told me the story before the show, before we started recording, but less than 8 months ago, you didn't even know what end of the gun pretty much was the end of the gun. And then today you're now being certified as a trainer for the USCCA, which is the United States Concealed Carry Association, in for the local area here in Southern Utah County. So tell me the story about that first time where you were telling me about how you were like, I didn't know which said end of the gun, whatever you were telling me.
Yeah.
And then like the process of how excited you were to be offered the opportunity to be one of the instructors.
Yeah. So I was not raised around guns. I didn't know anything, like nothing. None of my friends had guns. My family doesn't really like guns. So literally zero knowledge. So I remember like the first time before I bought my gun, I was looking. So this was more than 8 months ago when I was doing this part, but um, someone handed me a gun for the first time. I'd never even seen one up close before.
Oh, wow.
I'm looking at it. How do I hold it? I don't know anything. And then it was a class where they said, if you didn't have a gun, we'll loan you a gun and we'll teach you. So this wasn't Todd. This was, previous to Todd. And so they line us up and say, okay, put your sights on the target. And I'm like, the sights. What are the sides? And I'm
Oh
looking
my.
around on both sides of me, and people are pointing it at the target, and I'm like, they seem to be looking at that little bump on the end of the barrel. so so I put that little bump on the end of the barrel between me and the target, and I didn't know that there are rear sights. You're supposed to line up the front and rear sights at the target. And so of course I was missing. I didn't hit anything. It was kind of frustrating. I don't know what I'm doing, but yeah, I didn't know what the sights are, or that there were rear sights that you line up with the front sights in order to hit your target. So
So
that's where it was starting.
the moral of that story is, if Patty can do this,
Oh
anyone can do this.
yeah. Oh
That
yeah.
is so cool.
Yes,
That is
but
so
you
cool.
need a teacher. You need a teacher.
Yes.
There's no way. No matter how many YouTube videos I watched, I could not have learned how to do this myself.
Yeah.
So yeah, how do I feel? You asked how I felt about the instructor thing. Yeah, I was completely shocked, actually, because I
Hmm.
still feel like a new person. Because look at who I shoot with. Todd and
Right.
those guys have been doing it. They're so good at it and have been doing it for so long. And I still feel like the beginner. So I was completely shocked that they wanted me to do that. But I I feel like I want to give back,
Hmm.
really. I want to be like, I remember there was a point where, like back before I'd moved out of that house, where there was that drama going on. God told me I was at church and I looked over at someone and he said, "You need to tell her what's going on in that house." And so which I hadn't, I just never felt very, for whatever reason, I'd never really talked about it, but I went to her and she understood perfectly. She knew exactly what was going on without me having to describe everything. It was such a comfort to be able to talk to someone who
Hmm.
got it. And then she told me, "I want you to know that if you need to get out of there quickly, I don't care what time of day or night it is, you come over to my house." And
Nice.
3 days later, it blew up and I had to get out. And it was 10 o'clock at night. And she's like, "Wow, that was fast." But God looks out for us when we do what He asks us to. He looks out for us and prepares a way. And I just, it was such a comfort to have someone to talk to. I want to be that person, because knowing most women who get into this are going to do so because something happens.
Yeah.
I want to be that person. And something else I learned is that when I do something about it, I'm not a victim anymore.
Hmm.
As horrible a feeling as it was to have, someone standing over you, just screaming at you, trying to make you feel small and helpless. When I do something, it is not so traumatic. And I remember actually after our class we had together, I told Todd, I feel different. That class, something clicked. I think I hit the magic number of repetitions where it goes
Hmm.
from hard to starting to feel natural. And I'm like, I'm a different person.
Well,
I
I
have
think I think
confidence.
it helped. I think it helped that you had a red sight, that your sights.
Yes.
You had the
Oh
red
yeah.
dot. That's
Oh,
a fancy. You have a fancy situation right now.
I love that site. That helped a lot. It made it easier to aim, correctly and accurately and quickly. So, but I just felt I'm a different person, and I am not going to be that victim anymore. And I want to, knowing that most women that get into it are going to be in kind of the same
Hmm.
situation one way or another. I want to be there for them. I want to be the person they can come and talk to, because as kind and patient and wonderful as Todd and the guys are, they look like big tough cops, and maybe I'm more approachable, and anyone who needs help and wants to protect themselves, I want to be there for them. I want to be that person who's approachable that they can talk to about anything. So,
That's awesome. So if you're listening today and you're feeling like you might be in a situation where you need to have some, you know, TLC and some understanding and some validation and some counsel on what you should do to be able to improve your situation, and get in a place where you're no longer the victim. And there's a lot of psychological things that go into that. However, there's a significant physical activity like learning how to be a martial artist or learning how to fire a firearm and use your Second Amendment rights. That's what they're there for. And we have, thankfully, in America, I know several of you who are listening in other countries may not have that opportunity, but here in the United States, we really, and in other countries, you might be able to do self-defense where it's not Second Amendment, but you might be able to do, hand-to-hand combat and other things. So whatever it is, I think there's always going to be an opportunity to learn how to defend yourself against any kind of situation where you're going like that. So you you literally got, tell me about the day they invited you to be in the USCCA's certification program. What did that kind of, what did that feel like?
Well, I was shocked. And so yes, shocked. And then I've, because they teach classes there that are classroom, like slide based
Mm-hmm.
classes,
Mm-hmm.
knowing how to legally use force and that kind of thing, and creating a personal production plan. I thought that's what they meant. And I will be helping with that. But then Todd said he wanted me to actually help train the firearms classes. And I just sat, it didn't even compute, because I felt like the new kid, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and I just remember thinking, he said firearms class. That sounds like the firearms class, but it can't be the firearms class with the guns. It just took me. I remember sitting there. It just did not even compute. And I had to ask him, wait, do you mean the ones with actual guns? He's like, yeah. Are
That's
you
so
kidding?
cool.
Are you kidding? How? And he just expressed. He's just so encouraging, and I trust his judgment. But
Yeah,
it,
I mean, he's been training for so long, for goodness sakes.
yeah,
He knows how to train somebody properly to train other people properly. Like
exactly right.
he's at that level, right?
Yes,
And so,
exactly. And so there's going to be a lot of training involved, I'm sure. And I'll be the assistant trainer for a long time before he would ever put me by myself in charge of a class. So I have a lot to
mhm.
learn, and I'm excited about that. I'm really looking forward to that, to learn from the
So
master.
if you guys want to, if you're in Southern Utah County or Utah County or anywhere near Utah County, and you'd like to get a training from Todd and his group, Todd Nielsen training, actually, I'm going to put a link in the description below. And I just talked with Todd before the interview that we did, and he gave me a code. If you use the code PrepperTalk, he'll give you $25 off his training. So that's a pretty good deal. Some the handgun training, that's a 10% discount. And some of the other trainings, that might be even more. So it's definitely worth using the code Prepper Talk. That'll be in the description below. So if you want to reach out to us at preppertalkradio@gmail.com. So the Gmail is Prepper Talk Radio, all the whole name of our channel at gmail.com. If you're in another place, because I know that Todd, excuse me, Todd is going to be starting. They have plans to yet. I don't know if it's started yet, but they have plans to create video courses training people on handguns that can't come and be in a physical place with him. So, and that's not going to be as good as being physically there, but I think that the way Todd trains, that it'll be really close, and probably his videos might be better than some of the physical trainings you might have in your area, depending on who's doing the physical training there. So,
Yeah.
just email us if you want to be a part of that. As soon as that launches, we'll have that on our email list as we put that out to as Todd launches that service as well. So,
Yeah,
tell
5
me.
stars. Oh, I just can't even say enough about the training. They're so good. To get me from where I was to where I am now is, I mean, how could it be better training than that?
So
Anyway,
speaking
great.
speaking of that, you were talking to me about another training that they offer at BPMF. It's called the concealed carry training. So that was pretty exciting to hear some of the things you were telling me about that. So talk to us. So um, Todd Nielsen does at a range, right? At a gun range, he will have a concealed carry class where he'll run through scenarios. Let's say you're at the like the one you were sharing with me earlier. If somebody is pumping gas, for example, and all of a sudden they walk in to pay for the gas, or they walk in to buy a treat, to hit the road and go on. And that was one of the scenarios that you had, right? Where you were, and then there was this. So tell us about that scenario.
Right. So this is once a month they call it the concealed carry challenge. So something that might actually happen to you if you're out in the world carrying your gun with you.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is to put you. It's a different scenario every month. It's 2 hours at a range, so you can actually fire your gun. I've probably fired it. It's half a dozen times maybe. Through running the scenario twice. So there's not a lot of shooting involved, but best self-defense training I've had ever. It's so for example, the Maverick training, you're at the Maverick, they'll put you through a situation and they won't tell you ahead of time what it's going to be.
Just real quick, just so you know, in Utah, Maverick is a gas station. So
Oh,
that's the name of a gas station. All right,
yes,
go.
sorry.
No,
Thanks
no,
for
go.
clarifying. So they put you in a situation you might actually run into, and you don't just talk about it, you do it. So
Wow.
for example, like you said, you could be pumping gas, and now imagine you're going to go inside and you're going to go buy a drink, and as you approach the door, you hear yelling, and Todd will stop and say, "You hear yelling. This is what's going on. What do you do? And you get several choice points throughout the situation. And Todd always emphasizes, just because you have a gun doesn't mean you should be using it. And what do you want to do? And honestly, in real life, I would not go in. I
Yeah.
wouldn't go in. I
Go
just
get a
leave.
drink somewhere else.
Exactly. I'd call the police, let the
Uh-huh.
police deal with what's happening. But I'm like, okay, but I'm at a gun range and I have my gun, and you have something set up in here, and I know I'm going to get to shoot my gun if I go. So let me just, go on and see what you have planned. And so then the next thing is you go around. He has a bay set up, kind of like a little Maverick, inside with a tarp, and so you kind of get to go around a corner and look and see, and oh, somebody's holding up the Maverick, and what do you do? Do you shoot? There's, he has cardboard people set up around that are bystanders. You've got a bad guy in the clerk and just set up. So are you going to shoot? Are you going to duck back outside and call the police? What do you do? And just walk through what could happen. He has it set up so the bad guy could suddenly turn around. I won't tell you how he does that, but suddenly it's a paper bad guy. It's not a real person,
Uh-huh.
and then they're pointing a gun at you. And at that point, you don't have a choice because someone's gun is pointing at you and you have to fire. And can you draw your gun from concealment fast enough to not be killed? And then just
Mm-hmm.
walk through everything. And then after you've gone through the situation and all the decision points, then Todd walks you through it. And from the situational awareness ahead of time, like, could you have paid attention and not ended up in there during a robbery? And how to be a good witness. If you peeked in and seen somebody with a gun, could you have run away and called the police? And what do the police need to know? What are the
Mm-hmm.
police going to say to you when you get there? What should you say to them? What should you not say to them? The prosecutor, now I'm the prosecutor, and the prosecutor's going to say, how many shots did you fire? I think 3. Why 3? Why not 1? Why did you fire any? Did you
Mm-hmm.
cause this in the first place? Because you didn't just run away, you confronted them. And just what to say, what you need to know ahead of time before you get yourself into that situation, and just how to get out alive. And when, most of the time I wouldn't need to get involved. But
Mm-hmm.
if my child was in that store and there's shooting, I might go in to get my kid,
Oh, for sure.
for
Yeah.
example, so when it's appropriate to go in, when it's not, it's just 2 whole hours of learning nonstop. And then you get to run it again and fix all your mistakes
Nice.
and do
So
it
how
better
many
the second time.
so there might be a stay-at-home mom or a professional mom listening to this thinking, man, I'm already, I have so much time with my job, my work, my work and my kids, how do I find time for all of this? What would you say to kind of help them? How many hours do you really spend, and is it worth it?
Mhm. You know, um, yeah, when I think about it in terms of the month, it's really not that much. You know, I go to a class, I do it for fun now. Like at first, I was intimidated, but I did it anyway because I felt like I needed to be safe. And then it was still intimidating, but then I did it because it's intimidating. I wanted to not be intimidated, but like I was doing 1 day a month, 1 Saturday a month, most of the day class, and then going to this 2-hour class that Todd does also, and then just the dry fire, empty gun, shooting at a target on the kitchen wall while I'm
So
cooking.
maybe 8 to 10 hours a month.
Yeah.
That's so for 8 to 10 hours a month, instead of watching a sitcom or watching some weird show that you're watching or doing something dorky, you can literally learn how to defend yourself and your children against the threats in the world. Now, I don't know where you live in the world, and I don't know where you are as you listen to this, but there were places in the United States not too long ago that were full blown riots, full blown, like people burning. I don't know. In fact, there's a funny satire company called the Babylon Bee, and the Babylon Bee has put out a meme that says that Philadelphia is burning down their city preemptively in preparation for winning or losing in the Super Bowl. And so the idea that even after these big games, we just had the Super Bowl as the recording of this episode, the Super Bowl 2023 just happened. And so you can imagine that, in any sporting event, there's going to be some of those people that are angry and upset, and maybe they're going to have a little bit of violence going on. So whether you're at a sporting event or whether you're at the grocery store, and I know Todd was telling me, I think it was Todd who was telling me about a lady who he has trained that was at the grocery store, and she watched a man scanning the parking lot, and
Yeah.
went up, and she was able to she saw him go after a woman, and she was able to intercede or get in the between them, and pull her gun out and say get away or whatever she did,
She
and
hit him
defend.
with the gun. She didn't shoot him. She hit him with it.
She smacked him over the head. Okay, so you remember the story too then.
I do.
So
Yeah.
she ended up defending somebody else completely that she didn't know, but some other woman could have been the victim of some violent situation that day or that night. But because she was brave enough to have gone through the training, she was brave enough to realize that she needed it, go through the training, and then train regularly so that she had the skill sets and the confidence to do something like that. I mean, I don't imagine you doing that, Patty, but that's something that you're confident enough now to do. Would you say that's true?
Oh, for sure.
That's so cool.
100% confident I could take him.
So, I don't want to switch gears too far, but what after the firearms, what got you motivated to get into the to the hand to hand or to learn knife fighting? What did you do that first, or was that second, or did the gun training lead into that?
It was just that it was it was pretty much the same time that I
Okay.
got into them both. I just met Patrick there and just talked to him, and I'm like, wow, this guy knows stuff,
Yeah.
and I want to learn what he knows. Like knives, it had never even occurred to me to learn that, but I'm like, I would be stupid to miss the opportunity to learn from this guy. He's
Yeah.
amazing, and he just quick, short. Anybody can do the things that he shows us. Again, it's not like I'm some kind of athlete or something like that, but it's just quick, effective self-defense, and
Yeah.
then you're out kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and it also turned out to be fun.
It
Who knew?
reminds me it reminds me of the Karate Kid. Break the wrist, walk away. So Patrick Patrick's that kind of guy though. Like he's like when he does the when he shows the what his the what it was it called when he shows the situation, what he's about to do, the program, or what is his how do you what I'm blanking on the word that it
Just
is, but it's
demos.
the demo. Yeah, when he demos what he wants to show you, he does it so fast. I'm like, I just got hit 15 times in like 3 seconds. Like, how did that even happen? So like, and then he's like, half the reason why I do that is I can even push you away. That way I can draw my gun, or I can get to my knife, or I can get in a place where I can even run. Like that's one of the techniques he says, like
Mhm.
stun them so much that they're not aware of what's going on, push them away and run, get the heck out of there, give yourself some space between you and them. Oh, wow. That's awesome. So I don't want to, we talked for a minute, and then maybe we can spend a couple of minutes. I know you've been, your time is valuable, and I appreciate you spending the last 30 minutes with us, but you shared with me earlier about more preparedness related, and I don't think that, don't get me wrong. I think that firearms training, martial arts training is a significant part of preparedness and being prepared and being ready for what is going to happen in the world. Even coming up, we're going to probably see more riots, probably see more things like that with the way things are going. There's just no,
Right.
even if you read the scriptures, that there's going to be some things that are coming down the pipeline that as things escalate, and there's even civil wars and wars, rumors of wars, and all the things the scriptures talk about. But you shared with me some of that really neat experience that you had as you were learning to put your preparedness together with your food storage.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear that again. Share that story, because that was so cool.
Yes, it was. This was probably 10 years ago when I first started getting into the food storage piece of it. And I vividly remember I was watching the weather of all times to get into food storage. And they put up the national map, behind the
Mm-hmm.
weather guy. And I just looked at it, and every single major food producing region in the United States had some terrible weather event going on. Florida had a freeze. California was on fire. And California
Yeah.
is
What's new?
on fire. Yeah, exactly. But the whole Midwest, where so much of our food comes from, was underwater. Just massive flooding. The whole Mississippi and Missouri River Valley, just so many farms being wiped out. And that place was flooding. But Texas and Oklahoma, where the cattle and the beef tend to come from, was
Mm-hmm.
in a terrible drought, and tens of thousands of animals were dying every day. And I just had the thought, the time will come when you will not be able to afford to buy food storage, if there is any to have. And to me, at that point, food storage, things that old people do.
Right.
My mom cans food. She has buckets of weed in the basement, and I've
Yeah.
always been like, oh, whatever. But I vividly remember thinking, I have to do that. If you don't do that, there's a time will come when it's too late, where there is no food to have. So
Wow.
yeah, so then I started buying. Don't do what I did, because I just said, what's the maximum quantity of food I could get? I have $25. I could buy 1 can of freeze-dried raspberries, or I could buy 50 pounds of wheat. I'm like, let's get wheat. And
Uh-huh.
then ended up with this pile of food in a closet of like wheat and its beans and its rice and salt and just very basic staples. But after 6 months, I'm like, okay, I have, like, calorie wise, volume wise, I'm like, I'm done. Okay, Lord, I'm done. I'm safe. And I feel like I'm not going to. And there was a quote, I remember one of the leaders of our church telling us that, in encouraging us to have food storage, he said, the time may come where having your supply of food may be as important to your temporal well-being as boarding the ark was in the days of Noah. And I'm like, oh, that's pretty.
Wow.
I need an ark. So here's my food. Okay, God, here's my ark. Look, my ark. Look at all the
Uh-huh.
buckets of food. And I could just feel him smile at me. And he said, good job. You're not going to die. But how are you planning to eat that food? I'm like, oh, am I going to have to eat? Really? I hadn't thought about eating it.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, yes, you're not going to die. But if that is all you have to eat in a month or two, you're going to wish you could die.
uh,
And I'm like, oh yeah. He's like, you don't like oatmeal, but you have 2 big buckets of oatmeal. That's like your supply of breakfast. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can't choke it down unless I have brown sugar and raisins in it. So I guess I better find out. Let's Google, can I buy brown sugar and raisins in number 10 cans? And so then that
uh-huh.
kind of set me off on, let's make it edible food. And boy, will it be great to have freeze-dried lasagna that I can open, and not
Yeah.
open a can of wheat and then a can of whatever and grind it up. And so I would recommend that. Actually, I wish I had not done what I did. I wish I had started out thinking, what do I actually eat, and what do I need to, for 10 of those? Can I buy
Mm-hmm.
enough for 10 days of this and 10 days of that, and gone about it that way? Because I'll probably never get through the beans. I'll trade them for firewood or something, because there's no
That's so
way I'm going
cool.
to eat all that wheat and beans. But at least, I won't die. I might
Well,
wish
two
I could die, but
two things I get out of that. One, God has a great sense of humor, right? And two, that's
wisdom.
something that we teach that at Prepper Talk Radio. And one of the first things we teach when you're getting started with your preparedness, especially on the food storage side, is to look at what you eat for breakfast already and get 7 days of that, and then start with a week, and then go to 30 days, and then go to 90 days, and have a 90-day pantry. We talk about the 90-day pantry, where you're rotating those foods that you're already eating. And then once your 90-day pantry is full, move on to the wheat and the rice and the number 10 cans and the freeze-dried bigger things, and having some spices to go along with it. Because
Yes.
one of the things that that I have is I have a whole bunch of tomato sauce and tomato soup, because I know that if I have rice one day, just plain, it's going to be yummy for a day or two or three, but then it's going to start to get old. So I could throw in a little tomato sauce. Now I have rice and tomato sauce, which it's a different flavor, it's a different thing. Now the next day I might have rice with some soup that I had, like some chicken noodle soup, or some cream of whatever soup. And so now I have that. I mix it in, it makes it thicker and bulkier, and so I can actually last longer, but it doesn't have the same gross taste every day that I'm just choking it down to, like, you're right, you won't die, but in about a month or so of eating that, you'll wish you were. That's so funny. I love God. He's so funny. They're so oh, that's awesome. So I really appreciate your time, Patty, and you've shared with us some fantastic practical applications to being prepared and being self-reliant. And whether you're going to be somebody who's going to train for firearms, or train hand-to-hand combat, or whether you're going to, get your food storage started, you've learned some things today in this interview, and Patty's shared with us some fantastic wisdom. Any final thoughts, any last minute wisdom, anything you want to kind of put out there as we come to a close?
I would say don't wait. Don't wait, because it takes a while to find your community. You're going to need a community to learn how to do these things, and don't wait to find them, and just don't wait. Whatever small steps you need to take, just start taking steps, and you will be so glad you did. I feel so much better. I'm a different person, and I'm so glad I didn't wait. glad I found the right people to be with. So thanks, Chris.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Patty, for being on the show. Once again, you've been listening to Prepper Talk Radio and an interview, a bonus interview podcast with Patty, talking about the importance of self-defense and becoming self-reliant for the ladies specifically. But this is a great reminder for all of us. So remember to stay ready-minded, be ready-minded, and remember to put things in perspective with God, family, and country.